Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples. We have rolled out the red carpet again because it's time for our award show in our final episode of the season. We are dressed to the nines with Eric Devin in his Memphis Depay-inspired marching band jacket, Philippe Bargil in a tuxedo not too dissimilar to that worn by Florian Thauvin back in Newcastle, and I'm wearing a bewitching Yves Saint Laurent number. But before you get a little bit too enthralled by a man in a dress, here are the latest headlines. Paris Saint-Germain won the Coupe de France on Saturday in dramatic fashion, leaving it until added time to crush the dreams of Angers after Issa Sissoko put through his own goal in a 1-0 win for the capital club. Troyes overcame Lorient in the first ever promotion relegation playoff, the Ligue 2 side winning 2-1 at home on Thursday before holding out for a 0-0 draw at the Stade de Moustoir on Sunday evening. Les Merlus drop out of the top division for the first time in 10 years. The French under-20s have finished top of their group in the under-20s World Cup in South Korea with victories over New Zealand, Honduras and Vietnam. They will take on Italy in the next round on Thursday. And in transfer news, Bernardo Silva has joined Manchester City on a 5-year contract from Monaco. The Portuguese international cost the Premier League side an estimated £43 million, which could rise through future add-ons. And that's the news. But remember, for all the latest, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. So this is how our awards are going to be worked out and how they have been decided. All of our staff whittled down a list down to 4 nominees for each of these awards before putting those names to you, our audience. We then all had a collective vote, and both that and your vote combined will give us our winners. Myself, Philip, and Eric will debate the nominees before I announce the winner. So now that the formalities are out of the way, it's time for our first award of the evening, which is the League and Goalkeeper of the Year. The nominees are Baptiste René of Dijon, Stéphane Ruffier of Saint-Etienne, Johan Cardinal of Nice, and Johan Pelé of Marseille. Eric, I'll start with that Dijon goalkeeper in Baptiste René, who had a surprisingly good season to most viewers. What did you think to his campaign?
Yeah, I think this is one of those awards where we can recognize a player who has performed really well, and for a team that doesn't get a lot of headlines. Dijon are a promoted side. They played relatively attractive football, but they weren't the greatest defensively. They weren't an Angers style, very tight team defensively. And because of that, René often had a lot to do. And I think that despite less than stellar goals against average, he certainly was able to come up with a lot of saves to keep Dijon in close matches and preserving a 1-1 draw or a 0-0 draw on many occasions. He's also a player who has overcome quite a bit. He was brought into Lorient and lost his battle with Benjamin Lecomte there and has had to go back down to Ligue 2 and come back up as a means of success. So he's a player he's still only 26, but he's someone who's had to undergo a lot in his career in terms of adversity on a professional level, and I think that he's really done well, and he's very deserving of a nomination for this award.
Philip, let's move on to our second nominee in this category of Goalkeeper of the Year, and that's Stéphane Ruffier, who really has had an exceptional first half of the season especially. Is he possibly the best goalkeeper in Ligue 1 at the moment?
If we take just the first half of the season, yes, but I just don't think that his second half of the season was basically not helped by the defenders in front of him, and basically Saint-Etienne going to pieces. Basically, the defending was not very good. Ruffier had trouble marshalling them, and the midfield weren't helping the defense. So everything seems to have given up on everyone, basically. So it's very hard to defend Ruffier for his second half of the season, even though he still made some really, really good saves. But it was nowhere near his level in the first half of the season.
Yeah, and on to our next candidate, who's Johan Cardinal of Nice, who's had a really decent season, to be fair. There's been a couple of little blips of craziness from the youngster, but he's had a really solid season up from my point of view, at least. Anyway, he's slowly grown in confidence, I think, and now he's sort of the definite number one at the club. He's really grown into that role. He's helped marshal that really decent Nice defence as well, and has added a barrier. He still, although I don't think he's quite on the exact level, he does really remind me of Fabien Barthez of the past. He's very, very much a similar size. He's got that wonderful agility to really get a great sort of goal stopping, at least, ability to get across the goal wherever he needs to be. Sometimes he's a little erratic. Sometimes when he rushes out, he's maybe a little bit uncertain on himself, but he's getting, I felt at least over the course of the season, he got more confident and more consistent as the season gone on. And it is rightfully probably up there with a mix of really decent goalkeepers. Let's go with that final nominee now, Eric Ray, and that's Johan Pele, who many at the start of the season wouldn't have really predicted of being in this position and maybe being a real weak link in this Marseille side, and someone whom they might even still look to replace in the summer. But he's had a terrific season and the most clean sheets out of anyone in Europe.
Yeah, and it's especially impressive when you consider the quality of defenders he's had in front of him. Rolando's had a decent season, but if you think about the attacking proclivities of the fullbacks, and the fact that you have Rod Fani at his age being a regular in defense, and it's been a really impressive season for Pele. I think that few would have seen this coming, given his age and his lack of top flight experience. And I think that Marseille were unbeaten for a long time at home, and a lot of that was down to him. That even if the attack wasn't often clicking, as it somewhat struggled to do, especially before the arrival of Dimitri Payet, that Marseille were able to grind out the odd 1-0 win or get a narrow draw, even if it meant having to play in a rather restrained way. And a lot of that was down to Pele. I think that he is perhaps the biggest surprise of any of the players in this list, even more than Rene. I mean, Rene is someone who's shown potential in the past, has some youth caps or youth international caps. Obviously, Cardinal and Ruffier have a ability for the spectacular, but Pele is not someone who we've even seen very much of, because he was behind Steve Mandanda for so many years, and Mandanda had that long streak of matches played in Liga, and Pele had never had his chance, and it seemed more a matter of Marseille's poor financial situation that he was made the starter, rather than it being a recognition of his abilities. But I think he's completely turned that narrative on his head, and whereas goalkeeper may have been a priority for Marseille last summer, I certainly don't think it is at this point in time, other than perhaps maybe trying to build for the future.
An excellent list of goalkeepers at least, but the winner of our award for this season is Nice's Johan Cardinal. Philip, do you think that's the right result? Do you think that's the right goalkeeper to win the award?
I actually would have gone with none of the four. I would have gone for Lopez, but out of those four, yes, I would especially agree. Given his age and the start of the season he's done, my choice is a bit blighted, as usual, by his off pitch. Well, it's not really off the pitch, but with his incidents during Lyon's April months, and I thought that his performance were kept at a reasonably high level for most of the season, including towards the latter stages of the Europa League. But out of those four, I would say that Cardinal just about shaves it over Pelé and Ruffier. And that Nice continues this trend of getting great goalkeepers out of the academy, and it doesn't actually feel like people are rushing to sign him. So it is quite possible that Cardinal may be between the sticks next season for Nice, which is great news.
Eric, is maybe someone like Pele a little bit unlucky not to have won this award, or do you agree that Cardinal's probably the man for this one?
I would have to agree with that sentiment. I think that Pele definitely, for me, I think was the most consistent goalkeeper over the year. I think that if we look at the likes of Ruffier and Cardinal, are they fantastic keepers? Yes. But are they more someone that catches the eye with a fantastic save, but might be somewhat fundamentally lacking? I think that's also the case. And I think that Rene, again, is someone who's overworked and maybe benefits, again, because he's making so many saves in a match or over the course of a season. I think that in terms of a holistic approach, I think that the Pele, for me, probably makes the better choice. But I can see Cardinal. I think that he, is knocking in the door of the senior squad for France, and I think that given Nice's defensive record this season and the fact that he's had to deal with a lot of players coming in and out of him. The injuries to Bice, loss of form for Sarr, injury to Maxime Lemarchand, change of formations. That he's done well to keep Nice's defensive record as it is, and that he's deserving of recognition in that way.
Absolutely, and congratulations to him. Moving on to our next award now, and that's Ligue 1 Signing of the Year, and there's plenty of really good players, unsurprisingly, coming on this list. And our nominees for this one are Kamil Glik of Monaco, Nice's Dante, Benjamin Mendy, also of Monaco, and Wieland Cyprien, also of Nice. So two clubs clearly did very good business this summer, Philip. But let's start with the Polish international Glik, who's really been a rock at the centre of that Monaco defence this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, and just to show how much of an importance he has been, he's done a full Euro 2016. I believe we talked about him with Eric a couple of weeks back, and he's played 36 games out of those 38, barely missing any chances. He scored 6 goals, and he's basically changed Monaco from a reasonably good defensive side last season, but who did crack late on in the season, as is proven by their defeat on the final day to Lyon 4-0. And with Glik, not only did they have some guy who could score headers from set pieces, but also, generally one of the arguably one of the best centre backs in Europe. It made Jemison play better, and the whole defense has been very solid. It's also been, I think, very beneficial for a guy like Bakayoko to have someone like Glik behind him, and for the likes of the fullbacks, CB and Mendy to go forward. Really, honestly, a really astute piece of business from a player who was playing at Torino. So not exactly, you would say, a superstar Serie A side, but they got him, and he's done terrific, and it doesn't even look tired. It's amazing.
Yeah, and to get that business done so quickly after the Euros as well, when he was so terrific, I think was really the icing on the cake for that signing. But another really good centre-back signing is Dante, who was obviously from a free transfer from Wolfsburg originally, well, having had a number of stops in the Bundesliga. And I've really liked this signing this season. I think Dante, as Eric mentioned earlier about Nice, that they had some problems at the back with injuries to all three of the other centre-backs they have on that club. But Dante's been the ever-present, and there were some rumblings outside of a few German outlets that maybe he was a little bit past it, maybe because he'd lost a little bit of his speed and bits like that. He was starting to slow down and struggle in the Bundesliga. But I think he's adapted really nicely to Liga, and I think Favre has done the best to get the best out of him, putting him in the middle of that back three when they were there. He did a nice job of being sort of the sweeper of that role. I thought he helped Malang Sarr come on very leaps and bounds in the first half of the season. You could see him helping him position-wise and pulling him, reining him back in when needs be. And then combining with those three centre-backs when they needed to go to a back four, I think he did exceptionally well to sort of hold the fort in what was one of the best defences in Ligue 1 this season. I think he's maybe a little bit underappreciated for how well he did this season, because there's obviously more outstanding names in the defensive parts as we go on later on. But there's no doubt that his consistency, at least, and his regularity to play so many games at the back really helped a Nice side that were struggling for centre-backs for different parts of this season. But moving on to another excellent defender, but maybe a bit more offensive in a sense, Eric, and that's Benjamin Mendy, who's also being linked with a move to Manchester City, so he might not be staying too long, but it was a good piece of business to take him from Marseille in the summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a player who's been around for quite some time through his time at Marseille and prior to that as well, and who's always shown a real spark going forward. Good crosser of the ball, very dynamic. But sometimes his defensive technique wasn't as we would like it. And I think that was still in evidence this season on occasion. I think about that red card against Lyon before the winter break. But we've also seen, despite that caveat, we've also seen Mendy step up in a huge way, be absolutely the player of the match. on several occasions in the Champions League, thinking about that match against Spurs, thinking about the second leg against Dortmund, playing against Manchester City. He's raised his game, and while there are still momentary lapses that are frustrating, I think that the dynamism that he's given Monaco from that fullback position has allowed that 4-4-2 to thrive, and his energy, his work rate, he's really been impressive. I think that he was probably the signing that Monaco made this summer that I personally questioned the most. I think he's done the most to surprise me. He's become France's first choice at left back, and that's no mean feat either. Obviously, with the experience, I mean, again, they haven't had the greatest seasons themselves, but Luka Dean and Levin Kurzawa are certainly more experienced players, and for Mendy to be the clear number one ahead of both of them, and as well as Patrice Evra, has been a really impressive season for him. He still has the odd mistake. There was an occasion against Saint-Etienne where he shoved over, I believe it was Arnaud Nordin on the break, and was lucky to get away with not being sent off. But those mistakes are becoming fewer and fewer. He's really refined his technique defensively under Jardim and lost none of that attacking threat. I hope he does stay, but given how rare good fullbacks are these days, I think that it's going to be a tough ask for Monaco to hang on to. But yeah, certainly a very deserving nominee for this position.
Yeah, it's strange to think the amount of left backs that France have got that he's sort of surpassed both of them this season, with the fact that they have both been tipped to be future international left backs for a reasonable amount of time now. But another surprising young player as well is Willian Cyprien, originally from Lens, and he's been in Ligue 1 before, Philip, but he didn't really pull up the trees he did this season. And up until his injury in March, he was really a dynamic force in that midfield for Nice, wasn't he?
He's one of those signings that you thought was quite astute at the time, but seeing as we actually analyze his football when he was with other clubs before going before Lens, basically, we just saw, okay, Nice are getting some young guy from Lens. Let's see how well he does. And with the season that Cotiello had, it was quite difficult to see Willian Cyprien have the season he had, but he's added he's been a monster this season. He's added so much power to his game and made Nice such a great side that he basically made Nice's midfield with Seri, and Walter had something to do with it, Rémi Walter, early on in the season, but he's been more had a more difficult season with injuries. But make no mistake, Nice had the seasons they've had, especially in midfield, controlling games thanks to Willian Cyprien pulling the strings, sitting in front of that defense, and getting the ball around to Walter, to Seri, going up front, even hitting some fantastic free kicks. I'm thinking about the one at the Parc des Princes. He scored 8 league goals this season, which is third best behind Mario Balotelli, who, despite what people say, has ended the season with 15 goals, which is not that bad. And Cyprien, from a DM position, has actually scored 8 goals. So that's pretty good. I mean, apart from he's the top scorer if you take out the strikers. It says a lot about his game, and he's had a really terrific season.
And it's looking at the list back now, it is difficult to try and find one that's really a definitive one. But the one who wins our award for signing the season is Kamil Glik. And in all honesty, can anyone make an argument that, at least for a piece of business, that Glik is probably the deserved winner in this one?
No, that's who I had.
Yeah,
for any of the year, absolutely. I mean, for the price, we've seen center backs go for. Look at what Manchester City, for example, have paid for the likes of Mangala. What Valencia have paid for Ezekiel Garay, what PSG have paid for Marquinhos and
David Luiz.
Yeah.
It seems like crazy money now that you can get such a fantastic centre back so easily. Let's move on to probably the only award no one wants to win in this GFFN Awards, and that's flop signing of the season. Now, there's quite a few here that are interesting, and I'll go through our nominees, and that's Hesse of PSG, Grzegorz Krychowiak of PSG as well, Saint-Étienne's Brian Darbow, and Jeremy Menez of Bordeaux. We'll go through this one a little bit quicker because let's try not to be too negative on these, but we'll start with Hesse, Philip. He only played half the season anyway and didn't really get too much game time, but it was maybe a bit of a risky deal in the first place with a couple of Real Madrid fans particularly happily he was leaving. So was this a real miss from in terms of PSG and a one that they really should have done a little bit more of their homework on?
Well, there's really not much of things to say about this guy, so I'm gonna take into account Krychowiak as well, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
With Hesse, nobody knew really who he was. I mean, I'm talking about the average French Ligue 1 football fan. Whereas Krychowiak used to play for Reims, and him coming back really meant he was a Unai signing, and people were expecting him to be quite dominant in midfield, to be as good as he was at Sevilla, which won them the Europa League, which is a European trophy. With Hesse, the general idea was, okay, we've got this winger, we need a couple of wingers. Di Maria didn't have a great second half of last season. Maybe he can shape things up. Maybe he can do great stuff, but he didn't. That's basically the ongoing sort of Hesse's achievement, if you can call it that. He didn't. On the other hand, he wasn't really given a chance. I mean, just one start was against Saint-Etienne, but nobody really knew he was on the pitch. It just, I can't really think of a worse signing than Hesse in terms of just taking some guy nobody has ever heard of and thinking that he can actually compete with a guy like Di Maria or somebody else. With Krychowiak, it's much more disappointing. I mean, nobody really cares about Hesse, really. With Krychowiak, it's extremely disappointing, given that also the price tag. I'm not actually quite sure how much he cost, but it wasn't for €2, and he's played most of he's actually played most of the second half of the season with the reserves, and there were actually quite a lot of guys who weren't even playing football professionally who were playing up against him. That's how bad he's been. So both have been pretty bad. Yeah,
pretty bad is the best way to put it, I think. Eric, another player that we talked about at the start of the season possibly being a really good signing was Brian Darboe, but he's not really carved his niche really into Saint-Etienne, hasn't he? He's not really been quite the signing we might have expected.
Yeah, and especially we add into that he had fallen out with Galtier to the point of not being a part of the first team. It was a very frustrating signing. I think that this is what we had asked for Saint-Etienne, that if they were going to continue to play with this 4-3-3, they needed players who could be more in that box-to-box mold. And I was excited to see Saint-Etienne bring in the likes of Saive, Jordan Verretou, and Dabo, because I thought they would add that dynamism to midfield, to be able to play as more as the Blaise Matuidi type, as someone who can be a central midfielder, but can also affect the game going forward. And to see Dabo fail so badly, again, I think he was $4 million, but for a club of Saint-Etienne's means, that's a pretty big fee. And I don't think that he necessarily undid their season, but I think that if you think about how that money could have been invested in other players, it's certainly, to me, is a disappointment. I think he was definitely someone that I suggested for this flop of the year, and I think that he has certainly borne that out over the course of the last 10 months.
It's been a frustrating one for him, and another frustrating one, really, from many people's points of view. And I've mentioned it a couple of times this season. That's Jeremy Menez, who's gone into a Bordeaux side and really not affected them in any kind of way. Unfortunately, we thought him signing for that club might have been a really nice boost to go over next first season, adding to those young talents of Malcolm, of Unas, of Francois Camano as well, and the likes. It's such a shame that he's really not done anything to either improve those around him or add to the squad in any really meaningful way. You'd think his experience might rub off on them a little bit, but it doesn't seem to have done. Unless you're maybe talking about Unas's attitude, that might be the only way he might have affected something. But at the same time, it's a shame that that they expected a little bit more from him. But the positive is it's not really affected the club enormously. They finished well, and that was without his help. And I can't really see him staying over the summer. If they can offload him, I think he might be one of the first ones to go for them, really, because he's taking up a squad space almost at this point for Bordeaux, as they're looking to go younger and quicker more than anything really around those attacking areas. But our winner of this award, and it's probably really unsurprising for either, and that's Hesse, who's had a really poor season, really. Is there any arguments for that one? Krychowiak's, well, none of them have had great seasons, but Krychowiak's barely played as well, and he stayed around. Is that justified, that one?
I think so. It's Krychowiak surprising, though, because he's someone who Unai Emery had great knowledge of from their time together at Sevilla. So you obviously thought that Emery would have a good assessment of his abilities, and he was decent at rest, but yeah, that's been surprising. But no, Hesse, given his reputation, given where he'd come from in Real Madrid, I think that it's definitely the biggest signing, or biggest flop signing.
Again, nobody really. I'm pretty sure this time next season, nobody will even remember Hesse because nobody really knew him. Whereas Krychowiak, once again, I mean, he had played in Ligue 1 and he had played for Unai, so it's very close between both of them. And if you ask any, I believe if you ask any PSG fans, they would probably go for the Pole because he started games. He even started Champions League games, important games, and he came in with a reputation, which is sometimes, maybe a bit harder. But Hesse, I mean, nobody really cares. It's really about, well, he was definitely probably the worst player of the season, but it's debatable.
Yeah, that's not hard to argue with.
You could have a very long conversation about this.
Let's move on to our next ones, and we'll probably canter a little bit quicker through these ones of the positional ones of the year, and we'll start with right back of the year. The nominees are Thomas Meunier of PSG, Arnaud Souquet of Nice, as well as Ricardo Pereira of Nice, and Djibril Sidibe of Monaco. I'll start with you, Philip, and your man, Thomas Meunier, who's probably been the only real good signing for PSG, at least from the summer transfer window. How surprising has it been for him to outseat Serge Aurier as probably, you would say, on form at least at the moment, Paris Saint-Germain's best right back?
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. I do agree with the fact that what you just said, that Meunier is probably Unai's only good summer business. Then of course Unai went on to sign Julian Draxler, which has been quite successful as well. But Meunier has added he's played a bit less minutes than Serge Aurier in the league, exact same number of games. But he scored some lovely goals, especially I'm thinking about Bâle in the Champions League in the away game, and some other goal I can't really remember the league opposition. But a lot of people are quite supportive of the Belgian due to Aurier's attitude problem. And it's very difficult because it's not really clear who PSG's best right back is. You feel like since both have played the same amount of games, the jury is a bit out. But Meunier is definitely the most popular choice. He didn't insult his coach. People, I believe a lot of people in France are extremely angry with still are angry with Aurier about what happened on that video on Twitter. And credit to Meunier, because I mean Aurier is a beast and he is a very, very good right back as well. But Meunier from being just a simple footballer and going forward and adding the crosses and the strikes to his game has been a very inspiring signing for Unai in August. And that's the only one.
And Eric, let's go through the two right backs at Nice, because Ricardo Pereira, as we saw last season, is an excellent fullback that unfortunately we might not see again in Ligue 1 unless one of the bigger clubs go out for him. But also Arnaud Souquet, who in his stead when he was injured and when also later in the season when he was pushed further forward had an excellent season. Do you have a preference over the? It's a bit of an awkward question, but do you have a preference over the two? Is Pereira done the better, or do you think with how Suke's impressed in his first season with the club, how is he maybe the better? Well, not the better right back, but at least from that this season alone.
I think Pereira gets the nod because he's been impressed going forward to such an extent. But if we're looking strictly at the position, I think that Suke has evolved into a more complete player. Pereira is more of an attacking player. He often plays a wing back when the team were playing that 3-5-1-1 or 3-5-2. But Suke has been an orthodox right back in a 4-2-3-1, in a 4-3-3. He's also played as a center back at times as part of that back three, notably against PSG. And he's shown a real adaptability to fit his talents into whatever system Lucien Favre had asked to play. I'm not saying that Pereira is a one-note player in terms of being an attacking presence, but Suke has that while also still being very, very solid defensively. So both fantastic players, but I think Suke just edges it for me, despite how Pereira might catch the eye a little bit more, thinking particularly about that goal against PSG last month.
Yeah, and two excellent right backs, really. To have both of them on your team can't be too bad of a thing. And another good right back who a lot of people have kept an eye on is Djibril Sidibe, who has had, we've occasionally said that his defensive issues and lack thereof have really held him back from being a really excellent right back. But he's still really great going forward. He's really added that attacking threat to Monaco in those games, especially in Liga, where it's really added to their threat going forward. He's great. He's really unsurprisingly willing to get into those attacking areas and put those crosses in the box to add to the threat they have with Mundi. And having both of those on either side of them, and from an attacking sense, has really added to them this season. And while he's not the greatest defender, that's possibly why Monaco are more willing to let him go and allow Almami Touré to probably stand in his stead. He still had an excellent season, and if he does remain, and it looks like he might do if Mendy was to go as well, he still is a good, solid player that they can still use from an attacking point of view, at least, if he can just maybe be a little less eager every so often and sit a little bit further back every so often. He might turn into an even better player yet, but a terrific season nonetheless. But the winner of our right back of the year is Ricardo Pereira of Nice. It would be a shame to not see him anymore because I would doubt Porto will let him go for anything other than a big fee. But was there a better right back in Liga this season from either of you?
No, I have no. I mean, Suke is more complete, but Pereira has been fantastic. No arguments there at all.
Yeah, and someone. Sorry,
Great news for fans as well, for Suke being extremely promising and being extremely complete. But Pereira is so much better going forward, and he's basically had a better season from August to May. That's basically. And again, it's not that it's not that. It's not. It's quite close. That's what I meant to say between Suke and Pereira. But to me, Pereira edges it, but not as comfortably as one may think. I think Suke is very underrated and has gone pretty much under the radar from a lot of Ligue 1 viewers, and that he'll impress a lot of people next season.
Yeah, and that's the real hope, and I'm pretty certain that someone, a bigger team will pick up Ricardo Pereira and be very, very happy with what they're getting as well. And Nice at least have someone to step into his role next season, which is a real plus.
And maybe Brazil.
And maybe even Brazil. Yeah, that will be a great news for him as well. Moving on to our next award, and that's Centre-Back of the Year. And we have someone on this list who's already retweeted about becoming signing of the season at least, and that's Kamil Glik, again nominated in this category, along with Loic Perrin of Saint-Etienne, Paul Bice of Nice, and Thiago Silva of Paris Saint-Germain. So we've already mentioned the Monaco defender quite a bit, and we all know his positives. But let's go on to Perrin then, Eric. And yet again, another solid, if underwhelming season for Perrin from his own personal point of view of Saint-Etienne really not having the greatest season. But with a rotating cast around him, he's still been that solid base where they can really build from, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's just someone who's consistent. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't give away dangerous free kicks. He doesn't get booked. He's just a complete defender. He's good in the air. He's a weapon at set pieces. He has leadership and presence. in terms of his intangible qualities. Again, as we discussed the other week, it's amazing he's not gotten a cap for France. And another solid season. I think Glick has been better, but Perrin certainly deserves to be on this list, as he does just about every year.
Yeah, I always keep dreaming that Laurent Perrin might find out he's English one day, and we might get to spare him for the last couple of years. I'll take on Paul Bice, who's surprisingly on this list, even though he's probably played only about half the season. But that also probably tells you how important he is to Nice, and especially in that back three at the start of the season, I thought he was excellent, and really those three of Dante and Sarr and himself really balanced the team out and allowed someone like Ricardo Pereira to excel, and Dalbert on the other side as well. It was such a shame that he got so many little niggling injuries throughout the season that meant they had to abandon the three at the back, and then that also knocked Sarr possibly out of his rhythm as well. And really, when he dipped in form, that meant Bice had to come back into a back four essentially. He still did really well as well, but it would have been really nice to have a more consistent season in a sense for him to be more on the field on a more regular basis. If we'd have seen him more, I think he would have possibly been in more contention than I feel probably he's the outsider looking in. But it's a shame that we didn't see more of him. And there is discussions from a number of different Ligue 1 clubs taking him on with his contracts being out. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Ligue 1 or stay there next season as well. Final one on this list, and it's possibly a surprising one to many, Philip, and that's Thiago Silva. How do you rate the Brazilian season?
I think a lot of people will be misinterpreting this vote for Thiago Silva's season, not Thiago Silva's Ligue 1 season, because of the disaster that happened at the Nou Camp. But in Ligue 1, it's been same old. It didn't even look like he was trying too hard, but he wasn't perfect, but he's still pretty damn good. So that's probably why he's on this list.
Yeah, and there's no denying at the same time that on his day, Thiago Silva, with all the physical gifts as well as the knowledge he has as a defender, he can be absolutely terrific. But it's probably been a slightly more down year for him, at least anyway. Which, if you still get nominated, that still can't be a bad thing, at least. So the winner of this award, and it's second of the night, unsurprisingly, is the Polish international Kamil Glik. So if you are listening, Kamil, please feel free to retweet that one when we tweet that award out for you. Congratulations again. So left back of the year now, and that's another really competitive little section looking at the nominees again. It's Benjamin Mendy of Monaco, Marçal of Guingamp, Dalbert of Nice, and Lucas Lima of Nantes. And I'll start with you, Eric, with Marçal, who, again, Guingamp had a really great start to the season, but faded quite quickly. But he was, would you say he's probably their best player of the season? If you maybe Brion might have an argument for that, but he's really up there, isn't he?
No, Marcel's been incredible. I do think that Brion's been better because of his intangibles, his leadership, being the captain. But yeah, I think that this is another fantastic example of Guingamp following in the footsteps of the likes of a Nice and a Monaco, and bringing in these players from the Portuguese league. Thinking of Seri, of Pereira, and others, and being really impressive. It's a path that's becoming increasingly well trodden by Ligue 1 sides. There's very, very good value in that Portuguese league, and Marçal is no exception to that. And whether he can be signed permanently remains to be seen. He's not exactly young. I think he's 27 or 28. So perhaps there's something to be said there that if he's at a point in his career where he feels he can continue to take a step forward with Guingamp, he can do that. But I'm sure he's got no shortage of admirers, other clubs, given how well he performed for the Breton side.
Yeah, there must be a couple of, especially Ligue 1 clubs higher up in those sort of Europa League places who's keeping their eyes on him. Philip Dalbert, again, another Nice player on these awards. He's had a really terrific season as well, and is really impressed out of nowhere, it almost seems. And could you argue again that he was maybe one of Nice's best players this season?
Well, no.
That's fine.
It's quite hard, and like Ricardo Pereira, I don't think he had some kind of any kind of competition at left back or left wing, because Nice were playing there sometimes a 3-5-2, no, it is extremely hard to see any fault to this guy's game. First of all, he's played a lot of games. He's very, very rarely been subbed. He's got quite an impressive disciplinary record for a defender with 7 yellow cards, and Not much to get good critics from in this podcast from Delbert Enrique. Another great found by Lucien Favre.
Yeah, and really complimented that, especially in the first half of the season with Pereira on one side and Delbert. They had a really nice balance to those wings as well. Eric, I'll let you take the final fullback as well, at least, and that's Lucas Lima, who I know you've quite enjoyed for the last couple of years, at least. In that Nantes side that really recovered in the second half of the season under Conceição, was he a key cog in them really starting to generate some sort of momentum where they really struggled in the first, say, 3 months of the season?
Yeah, I think the way that Conceição has adapted that 4-4-2, it's almost like a Monaco-like, given how dynamic those fullbacks are. Lima is good going forward. He's good at free kicks. He's fairly solid defensively. And with how Dubois has grown on the opposite flank as well, I think that gives Monaco that ability to really dominate in wide areas that gives Nantes the ability to dominate going forward in wide areas. And it's been really impressive to watch the growth of both those players. But Lima absolutely belongs on this list. A really impressive season, and if Nantes can keep hold of him, I think that, again, with a number of other players, I think the Europa League under Conceição is a real possibility next year, despite the money coming into the league in the form of Marseille, in the form of Lille.
And finally, the winner of the left back of the year is the man that we've not mentioned, which is Benjamin Mendy. He's had a terrific season. Can you really argue that someone was better than him this season, either of you?
Close. Again, Dalbert didn't really put a foot wrong. I can understand how Mendy wins this one, but Dalbert was quite exceptional as well. So was Marcel. It's a close one between Mendy and Dalbert, but I think the Frenchman edges it.
Yeah, it would be a shame to see him go if he does end up heading to Manchester City, but he's had an absolutely terrific season. Central midfielder now of the year, and this is a really strong category looking at the nominees. That's Fabinho of Monaco, Jean-Michel Seri of Nice, Timur Bakayoko of Monaco as well, and Marco Verratti of PSG. I'll start with Fabinho because I love Fabinho, as I've maybe just declared a couple of times this season. I think he's been terrific. In all honesty, you can maybe make an argument for Glick for me, but I think Fabinho has been the most important player to the way that Monaco play this season and how they've succeeded, because he's so dynamic in that midfield role that he's pretty much had only a season at, which is crazy to think about of how good he is in that role. He's got such a great defensive mind. You can watch him when he plays. He's rotating his head so often. He's looking where the issues are. He's covered for Sidibe so many times that it's really become almost a joke. And the fact that he's helped him that much has really probably highlighted the right back as well. He's got a great defensive mind. His positional sense is great. He's got a great little ability to find the right kind of pass, the right kind of player. He's got a great switch of play. He's got a great long ball. He can take penalties. He's only finally missed one near the end of this season as well. And he's added a couple of goals where he's come into the box late. And the fact that he can also play right back and was good at that last season kind of says how good he is. I hope he doesn't go. I really don't, especially with Bernardo Silva going. But I think he's still a perfect player for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. He sits in that role where Fernandinho is perfectly if they needed to. If they preferred him at right back, and he can also sort of do the inverted right back style that sometimes Pep likes to employ, he'd be perfect at that. He'd be ideal for that kind of club. And I think he's been sensational this season. That it's such a tight category as well, because Eric, I'm going to go on to Jean-Michel Seri, who's been linked with Barcelona this summer. But that's just telling you how good he's been this year, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And linked to Barcelona, it tells a story of an evolution. This player was unquestionably a defensive midfielder prior to coming to Nice, and when he first arrived, he was definitely solidly a defensive midfielder. He wasn't the box-to-box dynamic presence that he's become. He wasn't the goal-scoring threat. He wasn't the creative player. And this is a player who, even into his mid-20s, is continuing to grow, continuing to evolve, becoming an important player for the Ivory Coast as well. And it's really impressive to see him do that, especially since when Cyprian's season was over. Seri's continued to take on an improved and expanded role in the team in attack, and been that force that keeps Nice ticking over. And it's been a really impressive season for him. And were it not for Fabinho, I think that he would be my nominee for this, or my winner for this category.
Philip, we've mentioned one of those midfield pair of Monaco, and the other one is Timu Bakayoko. He's had a really great season as well, hasn't he?
It's difficult to compare the aforementioned two and Bakayoko. Bakayoko is much more defensive-minded than both of them. Fabinho is more box-to-box, and Seri is not exactly can be described as well as a box-to-box. Only playing on a flat three of a midfield three. But Bakayoko has indeed excelled, and not really surprisingly, because we've seen the season he's had last season in 2015-16. For example, Arsenal fan would remember as being a rock in front of the defense, and he's done that. He's done exactly that, sitting in front of the defense and adding a bit of forward passing to his game, but being a great shielder of Gleek and Jemison. So, he belongs on this list, but it's very hard to compare them with the other two, who have been ridiculously good.
And unfortunately for him, he probably, with that finally a full season under his belt, sort of slowed down in the last couple of games, and that maybe is to his downfall. But finally on this list, I'm going to throw it back to you, Philip, obviously, because he's a Paris Saint-Germain man, and that's Marco Verratti, who's an absolute fabulous footballer to watch, but is he maybe slightly behind the rest of the nominees in this category, at least for this season?
Yeah, definitely. It's a bit. It's a bit like Thiago Silva. I mean, it's been same old, same old. It's been a lot of taking the ball, doing some flicks between midfield opposition, and getting the pass through, which has been great to see. Which has always been great to see. But now there has been some speculation that he wants to go to a club that goes further in the Champions League, that has probably a better mentality, and who can blame him? And the club has apparently said that some reinforcements are available this summer. But I honestly don't think he's had his best season for PSG, and that he can play much better. And yes, he may be the fourth best midfielder in Ligue 1, but the other three have had much better seasons.
And at least the best thing I can say about Marco Verratti as well, especially this season, is he is really a big game player. He does tend to play. He's not one of those ones to shirk the responsibility in a big game. At least he tends to try his best to control games, and sometimes he's unplayable. But he's facing really stiff competition this season, and I think
he does deliver against weak opposition. I mean, there are some players like that who don't deliver, but I mean, even if they're playing Troyes or Lorient, Verratti still delivers and still has some very high quality performance. So in that respect, he's a real pro, which is not that the same cannot be said for the whole squad of PSG.
I don't think he epitomizes the rest of the squad. But the winner of our award, and it's probably least surprising because I think Eric alluded to who he would vote for, and that is Fabinho of Monaco. It's very hard to argue with anyone else. Well, you could possibly have Seri in there, but the Brazilian has been terrific, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't really say much else. No.
Well, let's move on then to attacking midfielder of the year, and again another really nice competitive little group here, and the nominees are Bernardo Silva of Monaco, now of Manchester City, of course, Riyad Boudebouz of Montpellier, Thomas Lemar of Monaco, and Florian Thauvin of Marseille. And Eric, I'll throw it to you first for Bernardo Silva. It's a shame to see him go, and I think we all shed a little bit of a tear for him to go. Maybe me a little bit more that it was the club that he's gone to as well. But he's been sensational throughout his time in Ligue 1, and last season was no exception. Yeah,
this is a player who had a decent return in terms of goals and assists this year, hitting double figures in both across all competitions, but it doesn't tell the story. I think this isn't a player who's relying on pace. This isn't a player who's a one-note dribbler. This isn't a player who's all about creativity. This is a player who's supremely adaptable and can approach a match and attack a match and influence a match in a number of different ways, in a number of different situations. That his ability to see the game holistically and to make a difference, whether he's being played off a central striker in a 4-4-1-1, wide on the right on the left, even centrally in a 4-3-3, as he had been when he was first coming through with Monaco. has just been really tremendous to watch his rise. And I wrote a piece on the site saying that I think he might be Manchester City's best attacking player. And I took quite a bit of flack, especially from people in support of Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva. But I stand by that. I think that his intelligence when it comes to reading a game and seeing how it can be best influenced is unparalleled. And I think he's been the best player in Ligue 1 this year. And I think that he's fully deserving of not only a nomination, but winning this award.
Yeah, and I will stand on that hills with you, Eric, and defend you. But while that might get me some flack, I think he's been terrific. I will take the next one, and that's Riyad Boudebouz, who I've mentioned a few times this season. And I think he's an excellent player. Montpellier have had an up and down season that's been mostly down, really. But he, when they were excelling at their best, was absolutely terrific. He's such a great player on the ball. He makes great decisions. He's got wonderful feet as well. He's got great close ball control. He scores goals. He creates goals. He's got great free kicks and corners as well. He's a great crosser of the ball. He's just got a little bit of everything. And I mentioned in a piece before January that he was maybe a budget Payet for someone in the Premier League, or someone especially now higher up in Ligue 1 as well, like likes of a Lille, who've got a little bit more spending money this summer, must be looking out for someone like him. I think he's perfect for Lille, actually, that someone adding that creative flair to a team that needs something like that this summer. He's not going to cost enormous amount either. I can't imagine Montpellier will fight too hard to get too much for him. He might be already halfway out the door with how well he's playing. He's had his second half of the season has been less good, but at the same time, there's not been many players around him at Montpellier that have done too great. I think Mounier and a few others have maybe stepped up occasionally, but he's really a leading light for that kind of club. And when you see a player like that, he deserves really a step up next season. But while he's maybe not deserving of this award, I think all three of the other players in this award have maybe a little bit higher up on the list. He's definitely had an excellent season and will go on to do great things as well. I think he's still about 24, 25, so he's still got enough gas in the tank to really push on to the next level maybe. Philip, Thomas Lemar, he's had an excellent season yet again. He's slowly made his way into the France squad as well. He's probably got a future there as well. How good has he been?
He's the thing pretty bad with Thomas Lemar is that he's only going to be compared to his opposite number, Bernardo Silva, who is a more intelligent player tactically and probably technically. So Lemar has scored some absolutely wonderful goals. He's added great power and pace to his game. Probably his best season since he started as a footballer. He was a great catch from Monaco. Again, this scouting network has been fantastic, taking him from Stade Malherbe de Caen. But he's always going to be compared to Bernardo Silva. He is, and people will say, yeah, but Bernardo Silva is a better player, which a bit downgrades his season, which I think is a bit, it's a bit unfair because he's once again his best season ever. Monaco will be quite lucky if he does stay now that Bernardo Silva has been sold. So. Not much else to say. It's been a very, very good season from him, and I don't think he gets enough of the spotlight as he should.
And Eric, the final nominee, Florian Thauvin, we talked to Mo about him last week as well, how he sort of matured and grown into this role, but he has probably been Marseille's best player this season, hasn't
he? Yeah. Honestly, I think Bafé Gomis has been Marseille's best player. His goal record in terms of minutes played and the leadership he's brought to that team has been very impressive. But has Florian Thauvin improved to the point where he deserves to be a nominee for this award? Yes. I'm not sure about him being a regular with France, but he's certainly knocking at cusp and is in the conversation much more than he has been. And this is a player who's flattered to deceive for much of his career. He had a great half season at Bastia 4 years ago and sort of parlayed that into being the next big thing. He underwhelmed at Marseille. He underwhelmed at Newcastle. Even last season, he wasn't that great. But how he's come on, especially in the second half of the season, he deserves this award. He deserves this nomination. And hopefully he can continue to improve along with the club going into next season and playing in Europe.
Yeah, he's certainly one to build around for the future as well. He's really started to connect with the Marseille fans, really, unlike he has done at any club, really. The winner of the attacking midfielder of the year from GFFN is, unsurprisingly, Bernardo Silva. It's a shame to see, like I said earlier, to see him go, but we've had an absolute pleasure watching him for the last couple of seasons. And I want him to have a certain level of success at City, but not too much of a success. Personally, he can go as well as he likes, but try not to win too many trophies from my beloved Manchester United. Please, Bernardo, I love you so much. Let's move on to striker of the year and another competitive category, Edison Cavani, our top scorer at PSG. Falcao and Kylian Mbappe, both of Monaco, and Alexandre Lacazette of Lyon. Philip, I'll go to you first for the Uruguayan, who had a little bit of an indifferent first half of the season, even though he was scoring plenty of goals. He was missing quite a few as well, but it's hard to deny someone who scored so many goals this season. And there's really, I thought, been much better in the second half as well, from being one of the best in the league, isn't he?
So there's been some missed opportunities. I don't make that much of a difference between his first half of the season and his second half of the season. It's been basically him being downgraded as you'll never be as good as Zlatan, even if you score 100 goals this season, which he almost did, and just missing those opportunities in big games against Arsenal just goes to show that he just cannot do anything. Well, and no matter how many he scores, he'll be criticized for missing this, missing that, not being able to score in the big games, and so on and so forth. Even though he scored against Arsenal and he scored against Barcelona, I mean, who are no mugs, or actually who were no mugs. So. Yeah, another terrific season from Cavani, but he won't get his recognition because people will say, well, he's been playing with the best midfield, the best wingers, he's been playing with Di Maria, Draxler, Lucas, etc. But he's delivered. I mean, it's completely useless to argue this. His goal totally speaks for himself. He's absolutely delivered. So a great season from him.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue with that. And I'll take on the two Monaco forwards who've both had different kinds of seasons in the sense of where they were to start off the season, but both have been absolutely terrific in different ways. Falcao had such a difficult time of it, both with his final bit of a season with Monaco, obviously with the knee injuries, then going to the Premier League, and he struggled with Manchester United. He struggled possibly even more with Chelsea, and a number of people throwing out that he's done, he's finished, and he's had a really great bounce back season to finish second top scorer third top scorer behind Lacazette as well with 21 goals. It's such a really uplifting thing to see from the Colombian, because we've seen how terrific he was for Atletico Madrid and that first season in Monaco as well, where he really just used to score goals for fun, and that knee injury really seemed to cripple him, but he's bounced back to a wonderful degree and is deserving of not only a nomination, but to be a title winner must be such a relief for the man. And hopefully, it seems like his career is going to stick with Monaco now, and that's a great thing to see to someone that we thought possibly was, at least when he initially signed, people were saying he was too good for Monaco, but they seem to have leveled out, and it's nice to see him really have a comeback season like that. And obviously the youngster Mbappe has been terrific. Nothing short of that. A sensation, a whirlwind. There's so many ways to describe this young lad. He's been a breath of fresh air is probably the best way to put it. At the very end of last season, we saw little glimpses of it. The start of this season as well, before the sort of winter break, he was still not quite in the side. He would play the occasional games here. He'd still score a few, but he wouldn't start games. I think I don't want to quote myself, but I'm pretty sure I was mentioning he should be starting because I really like the style he brings to Monaco, but I don't want to make myself seem like too much of it. Too much I'm trying to heap glory myself, but he was absolutely terrific. And once he hit the ground and once he gained the confidence of starting every game, he was absolutely sensational. He's unstoppable. He's a great goal scorer. He's great at creating his own goals as well as making them making the space for others or pulling something out of another thing. He's going to be a very, very special talent, and it's not surprising that so many clubs are willing to possibly stump up so much money for him if he's to go this summer. Eric, I'll give you the last one, as he's obviously a Lyon player and a Lyon legend, possibly would also say, in Alexandre Lacazette. He's looks like, well, it's pretty much certain he's going somewhere this summer, but he's been a terrific servant and one final excellent season from him, wasn't it?
Yeah, in terms of the goal return, in terms of his ability to involve his teammates, his defensive work ethic, he's a player who I think we've said this before. He was somewhat derided as a poacher earlier in his career. He's played on the wing as well. But I think being a central striker, being played on his own, he's continued to mature, continued to improve. And I think he delivered as much as he could for Lyon. But given that team's defensive issues, given that team's managerial issues, it's no surprise that he's decided to end his career there. But what a career it's been. And again, fully deserving of a nomination here, without doubt.
Yeah, and our Liga striker of the year is Alexandre Lacazette of Lyon, and congratulations to him. Is that maybe a controversial one from anyone's eyes? Maybe Cavani in there, but there is a list of terrific strikers, to be fair.
I would have gone with Cavani.
Yeah,
for some reason. But I can fully understand Lacazette not having the same quality around him, and he has been exceptional. I wouldn't have gone really for the Monaco players because they've already won too many awards this evening anyway. So, and I'm pretty sure there's more to come later tonight. So, yeah, to me, it's Cavani edges it.
But
maybe others will disagree.
It's a very close race, I think, between all four of them. I agree with you, Eric, in the sense, Philip, sorry, in the sense that Cavani's goal tally probably should just edge it, but I can understand this also that Lacazette has had a terrific season, and that sentimental value of possibly leaving Liga has maybe just edged it for him on some people's views. But who are we to argue with the audience and our own colleagues as well? Never mind. On to what will be a quick category, I think, and that's French Footballer of the Year playing abroad. The nominees were N'Golo Kante, Hugo Lloris of Tottenham, Ousmane Dembele of Borussia Dortmund, and Moussa Dembele of Celtic. Just out of that list, Eric, is there anyone you could pick out as being terrific? I mean, we saw Dembele last season as well at Rennes, and he was sensational.
I think Kante. I mean, there's no way to argue how he completes a midfield, winning a title with two different teams in a difficult league in England. Absolutely, I think that he's also made himself an unquestioned starter for the national team in that time period. No, from where he was 3 or 4 seasons ago to being looked at as one of the best players in what's considered by many to be the best league in the world. Yeah, absolutely. There's no argument. I mean, Lloris has continued to be impressive, but both Dembeles have I think improvement ahead of them. But for right now, yeah, there's no question it's Kante.
Philip, do you agree with that? Yep. Well, yeah, they both are excellent predictors because N'Golo Kante is our French Footballer of the Year playing abroad. Congratulations to him on a fantastic season and winning the title with Chelsea as well. The first player to win, outfield player at least, to win the title with 2 different teams in 2 consecutive seasons. We'll move on now to our Breakout Star of the Year. This one's a really interesting character, I think. There's a few decent, interesting players in here, and that's Steve Mounier of Montpellier, Royce Diony of Dijon, Malang Sarr of Nice, and Presnel Kimpembe of PSG. Eric, I'll start with you and Steve Mounier. I know you're a big fan of the striker. He's had a really excellent sort of coming-of-age season, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, this is a player who had, through injuries and other players ahead of him, he's really in his second season of professional football. He spent last season on loan at Nîmes, did really well there for a middling League 2 side. And he's come up to Montpellier and really been their saving grace with his goals all season. He's an incredible threat in the air, but he's also quick. He's versatile. He can play on the wing. He can play alongside another striker. He can play by himself. Good finisher. Yeah, just an incredible season. He's been linked with West Brom most prominently. Whether he does stay with Montpellier or take a step to a different club, I think he'll continue to succeed and continue to improve. A fantastic player, and I think that he's got a lot more development ahead of him, considering he will be 23 this year, but again, only his second full season in professional football. I think that we can look at him as being along the lines of Timu Bakayoko, a player who's not exactly that young in the world of football, but through a lack of experience, due to circumstance, not talent, Still has a lot of development to come, and really impressive season for him.
And another player, another striker at least, who's had a really excellent season is Lois Dione of Dijon, and I've been really impressed with him this season. I think he's got the goal now that you really need in Ligue 1 as well, and his speed, his ability to find his ways in behind defences has really impressed me. And the goal tally for a club like that, who's not is more attacking minded than some of those down there, but doesn't have the great necessarily creative threat all the time. I think he's been terrific. I think there's a reason why a number of, especially Ligue 1 clubs higher up, have been looking at him. I know we've mentioned a number of those top half teams all probably vying for his services in the summer. I think he will go somewhere. I think he will add goals to wherever he goes. If I would really like to see him in a club higher up, maybe Saint-Etienne, a Lille, a Rennes, just to see how many goals he can score with a little bit more of a stronger side and a little bit more of a dynamism around him, whether he can really push sort of the 15, 20 goal season mark, which would be really, really impressive and really push one of those teams that are struggling really for goals on a consistent basis anyway to that next level. If he can do that, I have a feeling he can, and I've been really impressed with him. Let's talk two young centre-backs really now, Philip, in Malang Sarr and Presnel Kimpembe. Let's go with the Nice man first, who had a sensational first half of the season, but a couple of mistakes here and there in the second half. He was pulled out of the lineup. He barely played in that sort of after the winter break. Is it disappointing to see him fall off as well? And then moving on to Kimpembe after that, he's shown in flashes at least how great he really could be in the future.
Well, what I hope is that he didn't just stop being good just because he signed a professional contract. I don't think that's the reason. I honestly don't think so. I think he had a great start to the season. He was probably a bit on the tiring side, and maybe all these games took their toll. And you can forgive the young lad for having one good half of the season and one bad half of the season. And it wasn't even that bad. I mean, it wasn't terrible because it's the standards of his play alongside Dante. Was that he was so good, and I think he actually excelled playing in this back three, and probably doesn't really do that well in a back four. That's my interpretation of his season.
And very quickly, also on Kimpembe, he was excellent in that game in Barcelona, wasn't he, Philip? But against Barcelona, sorry, in Paris, and he's had some.
Would have been nice to have him on the pitch at Barcelona.
Yeah, if only. Is he possibly going to push for a starting place next season, much like Marquinhos has in the past?
Well, yeah, I hope so, because I mean, once again, Thiago Silva it's always been same old, and let's face it, the guy is going to be playing even when he's injured, unless he's really injured, just like against Barcelona. And Marquinhos has shown that he's a bit fragile. We saw him against Angers. He wasn't, shall we say, a sovereign against Touré Cambillo or the likes of Nicolas Pepe. I don't know. I can actually see the future being Thiago Silva with Kimpembe. It's a great competition for Marquinhos. It's good that a young player is coming up through the ranks, an academy player coming in there and saying, okay, I want to play games too, and there's a club giving him his chance. It's quite it's all very exciting, and I think he deserves to win.
Well, I think you're hitting on something that a lot of teams of sometimes bigger clubs, at least anyway, where we buy so many players that it's really nice when one young player from your academy breaks through and makes an impact. It's really, really exciting. It reinvigorates football almost, I always think. The winner of our breakout star of the year is Lois Dione of Dijon. He's had an excellent season. It's a competitive category, isn't it? Could you argue? You could really argue for any of those, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think Dione, given how he's impressed with the promoted side playing attacking football, which is not an easy thing to do, I think is a really impressive and complete player who's made the step up. I can make an argument for, as you mentioned, any of these players, but I think that given that Sarr and Kimpembe haven't been the first team regulars that Meunier and Dione have been, I think that Tierney probably makes the most sense at this point in time.
And all certainly players to keep an eye out for, as well as some of the others in our last three categories are going to be our big ones, really. And we'll start with Manager of the Year. I'll take the first one, and that's I'll tell you the nominees first. That might help. And that's Lucien Favre of Nice, Leonardo Jardim at Monaco, Bernard Cassoni of Lorient, which might yeah, it seems like a very strange one now. I don't know how that one slipped through the net, but
he got relegated. Strange.
Yes. What a terrific season he had. And Jocelyn Gourvenec of Bordeaux. We might skip Cassoni, I think. I don't know how that one slipped through.
Probably.
I'll take Lucien Favre first, who's been sensational for Nice. If this is the only season he's having, because there are big links to Borussia Dortmund should Tuchel leave, which is looking more than likely. He probably might go to a club like that, because that's a really big club to go to, and a really exciting one as well. But he's done a sensational job. He was excellent at Gladbach in the past, and one bad half of a season, and he decided to leave it. But with Nice, I can't believe that a team that we thought was superb last season, finishing fourth, he's got further and even challenged for that title, and we're still within touching distance with about maybe a month or two left, which is absolutely insane for the club. That means they've got a little bit more money, but at the same time, they didn't have the time to bring a load of players in. They've got a load of academy players or young players, and blended a squad really nicely in different tactical setups as well, for the 3-5-2s, the 4-2-3-1s, the 4-3-3s. They never really, other than maybe one or two games, sort of slid out of form in any of those formations, and that's really a tremendous thing to say. And they beat PSG at home, they beat Monaco at home, they drew with PSG away. That's three sensational results against the teams around them, and all credit to him for building a squad that had a structure at least of a decent side, but someone we expected to sort of slip maybe to the Europa League places, maybe just outside that. But he's absolutely done an absolutely magnificent job. There's no doubt about it, and it's hard to argue whether there's someone really better than him. But if there's one man, Eric, it's possibly Leonardo Jardim, who has had a couple of years at Monaco and had a reputation. Well, at the start at least, he was more of an attacking manager abroad, but this Monaco side has been possibly seen more as a defensive side for the last few years. But he's made a attacking juggernaut, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Earlier in the season, this team was looking a little bit wobbly as they advanced through Champions League qualifiers, perhaps getting the rub of the green in terms of the injuries that Villarreal had in that playoff round. But the more the season's gone on, the more that they've coalesced, the more that we've seen improvements across the squad, and yeah, I don't think there's any higher praise we could give Jardim at this point in time. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I think that there's something to be said, obviously, for Favre's achievements given the injuries he's had to suffer and the financial restraints he's had. But to do what Jardim has done against the financial power of PSG, as well as on the European stage, I think he absolutely needs to be considered the front runner for this award. Incredible season.
Yeah, and I'm going to very quickly skip over Cassoni because he's been relegated. He absolutely does not really deserve to be on this list. I think Conceição should quite comfortably be ahead of him, but well, that's a topic for another time at least. Philip, Jocelyn Gourvenec, he was expected to we expected him to do good things after his stint at Guingamp, where he really excelled. And it might have been a tough first half of the season, but he's really come on strong the second half with a young, exciting side that could even get better, even with the money around him. How good has his season been?
I mean, Gourvenec's a good manager, okay. He basically steadied not exactly a sinking ship, but a ship that's just keep being in the middle of the sea, not going anywhere. And he's made them a bit better than last season, which is not that easy to do, given that Menez didn't deliver. He made Unas a much better player. He made the team tick. He made Bordeaux sometimes good to watch, but most of the time it's been very pushy. It's been very very tepid, and you do expect better. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt because it's been his first season, but more is expected of him, given his talent and given Bordeaux's resources and the pull the club has. But let's face it, the guy does not belong on the list on the same list as Favre and Jardim, and to be honest, nobody does. So it's not really his fault. He may be third best manager, some kind of best of the rest, but people are expecting more of him and of Bordeaux.
And yeah, I think this has always probably been, even since about December time, a fight between Favre and Jardim. And our manager of the year is the Portuguese man, Leonardo Jardim. Congratulations to him. It's been a toss-up between the two of them, really. You could quite comfortably argue either way, but the fact that Jardim was fighting on so many fronts for so long, since August, when they were doing very early August, when they were doing the initial Champions League qualification as well, it's been an absolutely sensational season to be in a Coupe de Ligue final, Coupe de France semis, win the Liga, and get to the Champions League semi-finals as well. It's been a sensational season for the manager, who hopefully will stick around at least for another season, but is going to get a big job at some point in his future. I can't imagine him not, especially at his still young age, really, to be fair, for a manager. On to Young Player of the Year now, and this is for players under the age of 21 or under. The four in this category are Issa Diop of Toulouse, Kylian Mbappe of Monaco, Yoris Gnagnon of Rennes, and Lucas Toussaint of Lyon. I'll go with Issa Diop first, because I've written a few times about him this season, and I've seen Toulouse a number of times. He's an excellent young defender, really. There's a number we've already mentioned, Sarr, Kimpembe. Gnagnon we'll mention later as well. He's an excellent young defender. But Diop is I really like his style. He's got a little bit of pace. I really like him on the ball as well. He maybe makes a couple of difficult decisions. He maybe needs to be a little bit more consistent with his long range passing at least. But he's comfortable with it at his feet. He's strong in the air. He's great at covering when needs be. Him and Christophe Julian work so excellently together as well as a partnership. They really complement each other, with Julian maybe being a bit more of this sort of aggressive style of defender. I really like him, and there's links to him with RB Leipzig putting I think it was a €12 million offer in early this month. He might go somewhere like that. That's a really interesting move for him. Champions League football will be a massive step up for him in that defence. I think he'd be a really added bonus to them if he does join that club. Hopefully he stays in Ligue 1, really. And again, this is a player that Marseille, that Lyon should be targeting if they're both looking for centre-backs this season. He's exactly the kind of player they need. A French player as well, possibly a future French international if he carries on, although that's such a competitive market. He's definitely in that conversation. But does anyone want to take Mbappe in, add more superlatives on what we've already said? Is there more to say?
No, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I think we'll move on to Gnagnon then, Philip. And we've talked to Rich a few times about him and how really exceptional he's been for Rennes in what has been a really tepid season for them. He's a really exciting prospect, isn't he?
It has come to my attention that Rennes has actually won their CFA group, CFA being the fourth division, a regionalized division. Of course, they're not going to go up because they can't. But this just shows that Rennes do have some kind of academy and a lot of exciting and bright young players coming through the rank. And Gnagnon, I think, is one of the best. To me, is not probably not had the same level as Malang Sarr could have had, but still a very solid season from the guy in a side that was very boring to watch.
That's probably putting it a little bit lightly, isn't it? Eric, I'll give you your man, and that's Lucas Toussaint in Lyon, who, as you've mentioned in the past, is probably going to outseat Gonalon pretty soon. He's had a really excellent season.
Yeah, this is a player who is impressed with France at various international levels, but for him to make the step up to Ligue 1, to play in European competition, and to remain as composed and as dynamic as he has been all season, since coming in for Gonalon initially, when Gonalon was sent off for a challenge against Bordeaux, that gave Toussaint his initial chance. It's been fantastic to watch. I think that we're looking at a future French international, future Lyon captain. Really, really impressive season. I think that obviously, we have the players that we've talked about, but I think Toussaint isn't someone that should be regarded lightly by any means. He's been absolutely fantastic this season, even as it comes in a crowded field in a number of fronts.
And there's that list is a group of excellent young players, but unsurprisingly, our Liga Young Player of the Year is none other than Kylian Mbappe, who's been. It's going to be hard to describe words at some point. If ever mentioning this young lad, he's going to be a sensational footballer. Hopefully, if he carries on with the attitude he's got, he's got the world in the palm of his hand, really. We finish our awards, really, or at least our individual awards before we name our team of the year, with our player of the year. And we've already mentioned all 4 of these, so I'll go through and then ask you both who you think should win the award. And that's Fabinho of Monaco, Bernardo Silva also of Monaco, Jean-Michel Seri of Nice, and Falcao of Monaco. Eric, who should win this award?
Bernardo Silva. I think that it had been Fabinho for me for a long time, but the more I look at how Silva can positively affect a match, no matter the situation, and through a variety of ways, I think it just has to be him. He's been a player whose versatility and willingness to play week in and week out in a variety of competitions has been really impressive, and absolutely he deserves it. Fabinho is probably a close second, given his importance to the team, how noticeable he is in terms of allowing those fullbacks to attack, but it's got to be Silva.
Philip, who would you take?
I'd go with Fabinho. I think that without him, Monaco just are not functional in this 4-4-2. We saw it in the final of the Coupe de la Ligue against PSG, where Monaco got comprehensively beaten, and that without Fabinho, Bakayoko as none of the 4-4-2 does work. The fullbacks aren't as happy to go forward. The centre backs aren't as actually the centre backs doesn't really change the thing. Bakayoko is not as comfortable as he is. He's not as comfortable next to Moutinho as he is next to Fabinho, and Monaco need to do more all over the pitch without him, and that includes Bernardo Silva.
And the winner of the Player of the Year, and you're right, but those two are really at the top of that list, even though Seri's probably pushing them as well for a comfortable bronze medal. But it is Fabinho that is our Player of the Year. Congratulations to him. He's had a terrific season, and it's splitting hairs really between him and Bernardo Silva, who's also been superb, but it is the Brazilian that just edges it. So based on your voting, here is our Liga Team of the Year. That's based on the voting both on the Twitter feed and from our votes as well. So your team is Cardinal in goal, Ricardo Pereira, Gleek, Thiago Silva and Mondi as your defence, Bernardo Silva, Fabinho, Jean-Michel Seri and Florian Thauvin in midfield, and an attacking partnership of Lacazette and Cavani. There's managers Hardim, and then your substitute bench is Baptiste Rene, Jubio Sidibe, Marco Verratti, Timio Bakayoko, Lemar, Boudibous, and Mbappe. Is there anyone maybe missing from those lineup from either of you, Eric?
No, when the substitutes bench is included, I think it's a pretty complete set of players.
Philip?
No.
I'm
fine with this.
Yes, credit to both our team and our audience because they've picked an absolute sensational team that's really, really difficult to argue with. And that's all from us to what we have this week. My thanks to Eric, Philip, and to everyone who's come on to this show this season, because obviously it's our final of the season. It's been terrific. Our biggest thanks to you are reserved really for you at home as well for tuning in, whether it's every show every week or if you just dip your toes in now and again. It's been an absolute pleasure. Make sure to keep your eyes on our Twitter feed for our return in early August or for any projects that we do in the meantime. So keep an eye out for that. But for one final time for the 2016-17 season, it's a bientôt and goodbye.